Hello again, and thanks for joining my second company update this year. Last time, I told you about some steps we'd taken towards testing outdoors, with stops in St. George, Utah, and the Canary Islands in February of this year. If you're wondering about our choices of testing locations, each one of these trips has been a trip to see one or more potential investors, pitching and in many cases giving a live demo of what the body rocket system can do, and taking that extra time to keep testing and learning in beautiful locations. We've been out a couple of times since then, and I'm happy to say we've successfully made the leap to on-road testing. Our first stop was in Marrakesh in May, where we continued our validation, but also started the more fun job of making athletes faster. If you're familiar with any of our competitors, you'll know that showing live data has been a struggle, and we've not seen anything below a 60-second filter. Even that's not really gotten good results. So we had no real expectations other than learning when our rider George rolled out for the day of testing with a 6-second filter on his CDA data. What we got back was pretty incredible. We finished the day and we're happy that the live CDA had always been coming through, showing our data transmission was solid and reliable. And that's all we had really hoped for. The surprise came when we got back to the house and I said to Jordan that we should crunch the data before we grabbed lunch so George would know which helmet he'd had tested fastest. George, who was helping unpack the bikes behind me, had casually commented, "Oh, it was the Giro." So, not quite believing what I was hearing, I asked him how he knew that, and he said, "Well, I could just see it in the CDA data on the Garmin." So when we ran the data, he was right. That was really exciting on its own, but it's way bigger than what we were thinking it was. When you can see the difference live, it means that you become the expert. Up until now, we've been like any wind tunnel or other kind of aerofit. You do some testing, we crunch the numbers, and then we tell you what was fastest. But I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone who's done aero testing and then not set their bike up according to the advice they had because they didn't have much faith in it. When a rider comes off a bike already knowing what was faster or slower, they don't need to trust anyone. They saw it for themselves. That's a huge change in the level of confidence riders get from their aero testing. And that really changes their level of enthusiasm for testing further and learning more. As if that wasn't enough, we had another rider come out with a long-tailed helmet and, after testing, comment that they could see their CDA spike when they looked down at their computer and stuck the tail of the helmet up in the air. For me, that was the full body rocket experience. We're at the point where we can be driving behavioral change in real time. Look down, see your CDA change a few times, and you're going to learn to not look down. Or you'll pretty quickly find a better place for your cycle computer. Combine that with our analysis tools that let you look at testing and your improvement over time, and we now have at least a rough version of every part of the commercial product. I'll put a link to the case study with George in the description if you want to find out more. Marrakesh was a great confidence builder going into our next trip, where we met Kristian for a couple days of aero optimization near their altitude camp in Sierra Nevada. We still had our work cut out for us because the testing conditions were a bit tougher. It was on a rougher road and the winds were a bit stronger with yaw angles up to about 10 degrees at times. Even with that, we managed to get our baseline repeatability down under 2% error, which is quite close to what we do in the velodrome. We had a pretty restricted envelope to work in as Kristian had Ibiza coming up in a couple of weeks and his skin suit and helmet choices were already locked in. We focused on his cockpit setup and managed to find him a position that's 15.5 watts more efficient at his race speed over the course of just a morning of testing. Unlike some of his past wind tunnel testing, he left the session already knowing his new position is more comfortable, more stable in crosswinds. I think we can find him that size of gains again when we see him next. We're pretty excited to see him clock the second fastest bike split in Ibiza already. Working with pros is, of course, a little different than working with some of our test riders, and Olaf joined us in the follow vehicle for some of the testing, watching Kristian's CDA live on a laptop and telling us what he'd like to see next as we keep improving the experience.
I like this. This is really the next step for coaches.
Overall, though, I think he liked it already. For the rest of this month, we're working on additional upgrades to the system. We're already running our next generation pedals on all bikes. This one's getting an upgrade soon. And in the coming weeks, we expect to remove our saddle electronics box from the system and finish qualifying our pre-production electronics for the handlebar and saddle units, clearing the way for the move from this sensor to our smaller, lighter, and stronger sensors we unveiled at Kona last year, and you can see just peeking up from Kristian's handlebars here. We've got a few exciting test events coming up soon as well, but you'll have to wait till my next video to see those.